Today we are talking about genetically modified foods and specifically the public's perception of the risk of these genetically modified foods. So GMOs actually had a very rough beginning. Scientists introduced GMOs as a way to solve the issue with food scarcity and a growing population, meaning we didn't have enough food for our growing population. And this promise was actually never fulfilled because that's never what GMOs were actually focused on. And this made the public doubt the authenticity of GMOs right from the start. GMOs were instead used to increase market share of chemical pesticides, and this untruthful foundation fostered a negative public reaction just right from the beginning. I wanted to give some insight as to what the ordinary person's point of view would be on genetically modified foods. So we have to understand that the public is particularly sensitive to what is put in their food because it can directly affect our health. And Brian Wynn, who has spent a lot of time analyzing dominant characterizations of public concerns about GMOs, kind of explains that the concern of the public has actually been misinterpreted by policymakers as ignorance. They believe that the public just doesn't understand what GMOs are and doesn't actually see the benefits that the scientific community are seeing, but in reality, the public simply does not believe that science knows enough about the facts to move forward with GMOs. For example, we don't know enough about the long-term consequences or have any long-term studies and how it could affect us down the line and things like that, just because GMOs are pretty new. Right now, there is a huge lack of communication between the scientific community and the public. There is not much public outreach coming from scientists or policymakers, and when there is, it is at a small scale. I think this is very interesting, especially in regards to STS, because we see how this issue could be solved somewhat easily, but since there is a lack of communication and not much of an effort to put the outreach out there, the issue continues to go on in the same way. The controversy over genetically modified food labeling is still being debated at several different levels and branches of government. At the federal level, the Food and Drug Administration has steadfastly refused to require labeling of genetically modified foods since 1992 because they believe genetically modified foods present no unique or higher risk than other foods. Proposed legislation has been presented to the U.S. Congress many times and has made no progress with federal labeling requirement. Scientists and companies responded to the challenge of trying to explain GMOs by not explaining them at all. As I said before, the scientific community believed that the public was ignorant to GMOs, and they didn't think that their perception of GMOs being introduced to the grocery store would be positive at all. However, by not labeling these products, it actually made the public think that GMOs were more shady and kind of backfired. Nowadays, if you walk down a grocery aisle, the only products that bear transparent GMO labels are the ones that do not have GMOs. And this is actually kind of ironic because GMO products are even more rigorously tested than non-GMO alternatives. So they're actually, in a sense, safer than non-GMO products. Genetically modified foods were not widely accepted and still have controversy surrounding the subject. However, if we look at genetically modified organisms, or specifically genetically engineered bacteria created for creating insulin for insulin-dependent diabetics, the use of the genetically modified bacteria was controversial only very briefly at the start of the use. And that is because people could see the clear and identifiable benefits of using the bacteria, which people could not see when using genetically modified crops and foods. I believe that looking at a farmer's perspective is very important because they are a huge part of agriculture, and genetically modified foods are greatly changing that field right now. So there was research conducted by Economic and Social Research Council, or ESRC, and it tells that farmers are upbeat about genetically modified crops. They view genetically modified foods as an extension of plant breeding techniques that are already implemented in today's farming world, and their concerns were about if genetically modified foods would contribute to the profitability of their farms, and nowhere near anything about health issues or public perceptions. To farmers, genetically modified foods have no issues regarding what is right or wrong. Professor Lane from Open University claims they want to produce high-quality food profitability, and they want to farm in an environmentally sensitive way. Genetically modified foods may allow them to reconcile this conundrum by doing both of these things at once. There are many countries that have banned GMOs. As of a few years ago, there were actually 16 countries that had total or partial bans on GMOs. Nowadays, there are at least 26. Some reasons for banning GMOs in countries are the countries are being precautionary of protecting the environment against unforeseeable risks from GMOs. Some countries are avoiding public controversy or uneasiness, and some are protecting their trade because countries that do not agree with GMOs will not trade with them anymore if they do decide to implement GMOs. And now I wanted to ask what the audience thinks after we've looked at the local public's view of GMOs and their concerns, as well as other countries' views and farmers' views.